Welcome back to the Motivational Intelligence Podcast, where we uncover the mindsets, the strategies, and the real-world experiences that empower leaders to break through limits, build world-class teams, and create lasting success. Today's conversation is a really powerful one. We're sitting down with Chuck Thompson, a global HR transformation leader, change architect, and innovator who spent over 2 decades transforming organizations, developing high-performance teams, and driving strategic change at a global level. Chuck currently serves as the AVP of Corporate HR at Sutherland Global, where he's led game-changing initiatives in employee engagement, leadership development, and HR transformation. But what makes Chuck's journey truly remarkable is really his personal story. It's a journey of resilience that took him from being homeless at 15 to becoming a world-renowned leader, strategist, and mentor. And so beyond his corporate success, Chuck has owned a warehouse gym and a men's care company, become a master Reiki practitioner, built a career on empowering people through self-awareness, accountability, and transformational leadership. In this episode, we'll explore how personal challenges shaped his leadership philosophy, the pivotal moments that changed how he thought about success and impact, and the power of choice, why the biggest breakthroughs come from taking full ownership of our lives. This is one of those conversations that's really going to make you pause, reflect, and rethink what's possible. Please enjoy. This podcast is powered by Mojo, the people transformation platform. As a global top 20 training firm and the world leader in motivational intelligence development, our clients kept asking us a question: what does the future of professional development look like? So think of this podcast as a teaser for what could exist inside your organization. Because we all use podcasts and AI to learn and improve in our personal lives, right? So why are we not using podcasts and AI to transform our people at work? We've taken everything we've learned from working with 40% of the Fortune 500 in 97 countries worldwide, and we've combined it with cutting-edge technology to give you the most powerful weapon in the history of human development. Here's how it works. Almost like magic, what Mojo does is it generates powerful, targeted conversations among employees to rapidly resolve challenges like low or unbalanced performance, high turnover, poor leadership, low change readiness, low succession readiness, or the merging of cultures and the elimination of silos. Along the way, Mojo embeds a success culture into the DNA of every team at your organization and enhances every interaction your people have from now on, both inside and outside of work. Start a 14-day free trial of Mojo today at joinmojo.com/trial and experience what has changed hundreds of thousands of lives around the world, mine included. So get started now at joinmojo.com/trial. That's joinmojo.com/trial.
And the more I studied it, the more I began to see that that was the overwhelming commonality of the most successful people that I ever met.
And just the empowerment of the conversations, how it just really motivates you. You don't come across people that impact you that way.
Because a lot of people could say to me, oh yeah, no, I get it. But yet they really don't get it.
This, if you really lean into it, can be life-changing.
Mojo's is part of our DNA and what we do during team meetings.
And I just looked at Randy like, oh my God.
I feel like that's made a lot of impact in my direct report's life because they're not afraid to talk to me.
But I started to see what this gentleman did in podcast. And I was like, it was just kind of surreal because it was almost like he foreshadowed what I was going to be up against that.
They would come in every week and ask me, Paul, how far would you like to get? That's when I told them 105%. And they laughed and I said, no, 105% is where I'm going to be.
I think that concept is one that everybody can buy into, and saying that I can improve 1% from yesterday.
An unstoppable state of mind that enables you and I to achieve everything that we want out of our professional and our personal life.
Chuck, I've been really looking forward to this conversation. You know, we've gotten to know each other a bit over the past several months, you know, through our work with Mojo at Sutherland. And one of the things that struck me just in, you know, group conversations, your command, your practice of motivational intelligence, so the principles that we talked about, you know, has really kind of blown me away. Just the takeaways, the stories you shared, you know, they've been so next level. I've even said this to people internally that Chuck is one of the most aware leaders I've ever worked with, you know, when it comes to motivational intelligence. And I think a big part of the reason is you've lived it. You've used it. You're such a practitioner. So I've been really excited for this conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to kind of start our conversation today, you know, and I wanted our whole conversation today to really explore your experiences with it, what you've learned, how your understanding of it has evolved. But I wanted to maybe start at the beginning, which is kind of, at least in my mind, go back to when did you kind of first recognize your ability to kind of control your mind, and maybe second, the importance of it?
So it's a really good question. First off, thank you for all the accolades at the beginning. I'm already here, so you don't have to pay me off for that. Right. No, I appreciate that. As far as an awareness goes, it's an evolution. I think back to a lot of my life up until probably 2017 being just kind of free flowing, going with, whatever came up. Right. And I had a base understanding of the principles of mindset. I was fortunate enough to see Zig Ziglar live, Brian Tracy, right? I really got into Tony Robbins. So those little pieces kind of come in and you get some inklings along the way. But 2017, I think, is where things really started to take a turn. And then a little bit more recently, where you begin to kind of see that a mojo mindset, right, as you like to call it, or a motivational mindset is really components of 7 different things, right? It's attitude, it's an abundance mentality, it's personal responsibility, it's the drive to get things done now, along with a work ethic, your ability to handle adversity and triggers, and then the goal orientation. And you talk a lot about that in not only the podcast, but in the training that you brought to my organization. Where it became real for me is in thinking about my life up until 2017, when my wife and I, we've been trying for a long time to get pregnant. We had given birth to my now youngest son a year before, and decided to try again. And we lost that baby, and that's an awakening, right? All along the way, it was a challenge, and you're faced with a choice on how you're going to kind of deal with that reality that's being presented to you, right? And it was so challenging because that event in particular, we went through a situation where around the October timeframe, we were able to hear the heartbeat. And able to kind of see her, and, went through, all that process. And then we were told that, the baby wasn't going to make it, and that, she was gone, and then went back in for another ultrasound, and the heartbeat's back there, and it's all this up and down. And, got to the point where they gave my wife an ultimatum and said, look, you need to make a decision, because if you don't, the baby's going to make a decision for you, and it's probably going to result in you not being here. Right. And a lot of back and forth, but we determined that what we're here for is to propagate and give that kid a chance. And it didn't work out, unfortunately, but it brings you to a point where you take a look at those kind of 7 things and you put it into perspective, and you say, what are we here for? What is the goal of the goal? What's the reason that we're doing this? The initial goal that we have is we want to have a baby. What's the goal of the goal? Why do we want to do that? And what are we looking to do? Right. And that kind of, to me, it's rather late in life, right? It wasn't that long ago to have that awakening, but looking back, like that was kind of the start of it, and where things started really clicking and coming into play for me in a way that hit home, as hard as it hit home, during that period.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine going through something like that. What was it about that moment in time, and that situation? Was it just was it a rattling of the fragility of life? Was it a survival mechanism? Like, if I don't really take the reins here, then, this could drown me. What do you think it was that really, with an event like that, was it that shook you to kind of flip a switch in some ways?
So, I mean, I think, Sean, it's a number of things, right? It's a reality that we're finite, right? We have a limited scope, a limited impact as far as any of us are concerned, right? I could tell you my grandmother's name. I could tell you maybe my great grandmother's name, but going past that, no idea, right? I really didn't know them. I didn't have anything to do with them. I'm assuming most people don't. So we have a very narrow scope. When you're going through something like that, your scope is narrowed even farther. It's you, it's your partner, and it's the event that's occurring. My role in it is something that I had to kind of figure out. How do I support my partner in that? How do I best be present for my kids and my family? How do I explain the decisions that we're making? Do I even need to explain those decisions that we're making? You begin to take a very narrow, laser-focused view. I'd like to say that there's some sort of awakening that occurs, at that moment, and, you reach enlightenment. That's definitely not the case. I poured myself into that situation. I poured myself into launching a business at the same time to kind of like get my mind off of it. I, started focusing on myself in a lot of ways. And a lot of that drive was, around the negative. And I had a person tell me at the time, or ask me, and I think we talked about this at one point, but they asked me, you're getting all these things accomplished and you're doing all these great things and you're doing it from a place of fear and you're doing it from a place of anger and you're doing it from a place of, all these negative emotions. How much more could you accomplish if you flipped that script and you looked at it from a place of positivity and, what you can actually give back? So that started me down that path, right? And I think it planted a seed that later served to bring me a little bit farther along, right? It was here I need to start not just focusing on me and all these things and building excuses, but actually looking at my family and taking care of what needs to be taken care of and looking at the why behind the why and the goal behind the goal, right?
Yeah. Who was the person that said that to you? Was it just kind of a passerby? Was it somebody that you were close with?
His name is Brian Harrison. He's actually a therapist. Yeah. He's a great sage advice from him. And I know I pushed back and I reacted. I'm positive of that, but it stuck with me. Right.
Yeah. So what was that? Because I know, I've had experiences just in the evolution of our understanding of things, of these, like you said, it's not a flip of a switch. It's not, this all of a sudden, aha, enlightenment moment. It's an evolution. And at least for me, the process of the evolution of awareness around some of the things we're going to talk about today, it's not always an easy one. To your point, I'm sure I pushed back. I'm sure I fought him on it. It's been my same experience with, my mentor, Joe. There's been plenty of times that he's told me things that, knee jerk I didn't like and maybe didn't agree with. And I, the best way I could describe that is like this mental wrestling match that I'm kind of wrestling with myself with, where I'm at right now. And, what seems to be maybe the optimal way to look at things, but I'm so stuck over here. What was the wrestling match in your mind, like that evolution for, that moment in time?
I think there was a lot of blame that I played, in refusing to accept the responsibility. Like, it's not my fault that things are going the way they are. The family problems that kind of came out of it and the turmoil that we were experiencing, it's always something else. It's because of this, it's because of that. All of that gets stripped away in moments like that. You're forced to face that fact that it's you, that you're in control of it. And, to Brian's point, you have a choice on what you do with it. And you can either become a force for good, or you can continue wallowing and you're going to get stuff done, but it's going to be self-destructive or has a propensity to become self-destructive in the end. And, that's not going to play out well for, it was few years later, so 2017 took us into kind of the enter into the pandemic, and then shortly after the pandemic, I started getting some phone calls from my mom to give her a call, and I just kind of ignored it, and ended up finally calling my mom back, and she told me that choking up, so that she was going in for routine surgery, that she had a couple of heart attacks, and she didn't want to bother my sister and I with it, but she had to go in for surgery to get that taken care of, and just wanted to talk to me before she went in. And so I talked to her, and she went in for that surgery. It was June 2nd, and she didn't make it out of that surgery. Just didn't. It's very clear to me that the reason I didn't call her back is, one, because I didn't learn the lessons I should have learned back in 2017. You don't know how long things are going to last, and you need to take advantage of it now and then. But also that I blamed still my parents for a lot of what happened to me and the difficulties and turmoils, right? Not being there. And I used that to drive me, right, and become very successful. But I still was kind of harboring that. And so we talked about running at the very beginning of this, right? Kind of probably before we were taping, but I now run. One of the things that led me to run was my mom passing away. And I decided to take Brian's advice finally and look at things from a positive sense. And my way of doing that was to relive my mom's life in miles. So my mom passed away when she was 70, starting on June 4th, somewhere around there. I started running and I tracked it through the miles. So mile 1 was when she was born, right? Mile 13 is when she was in high school, and mile 16 is when she met my dad, and et cetera, through the rest of her life. That was the most eye-opening thing I think that I could have ever done, to take a second to not just look at it through the loss that I had experienced, but to frame it in what that person had been through and the actual legacy that that person was leaving behind. And to take each of those miles and each of those steps to look past the views and the angst and all those things that I was kind of carrying inside of me, set those aside just for that time, and to change the perspective, to look at it from a Mojo mindset, right? See it from a larger aperture, to allow those pieces to come in. And man, that was 2 years ago now. I can honestly say, like, things are so significantly different. And when you ask me kind of what's the story of kind of what brought you to the awakening, if you will, and to that type of mindset, like, I think that played like such a huge role in both of those events. And there's a lot of other things that kind of led up to that, right? You know some of those, but I mean, those 2 events, one kind of, set the ball up, and the other one just knocked it out, in a way I absolutely wasn't expecting, and it's been life-changing, and it's been completely, I'm able to approach each situation completely different. It allows you to step into, a person's shoes and mindset and kind of understand what's going on, and hopefully take the time to move them up the chain just a little bit, knowing that impact that you're making is so meaningful to that one person at that one time.
Yeah.
Let me be so heavy to begin this podcast.
we came out of the gate hot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a unique. Where did you come up with the idea to relive your mother's life in miles? Where did that come from? Is that just an idea that you had? Had you read that somewhere? Where did that come from?
I was so angry. I was so angry, and I had quit drinking a few months before that, and I decided I wasn't going to go back to that. I tried it on a whim to just, stop and see what happens, right? For me, it was starting on St. Patrick's Day the same year. I just to see for 30 days, 90 days, and now, still, right? So I wasn't going to go back, but I was so filled with like rage. I needed an outlet. I've always been a very physical person, and so I decided to just lace up the shoes and go, and just see what happens. And then I just kept going. And then I was like, yeah, you know what? This would be interesting. So I kept pictures, and I posted pictures online. I'm like, all right, here's what I'm doing. And I was kind of public with it. I don't know. It just was natural. It seemed like to me it was natural. It was my therapy at the time. And man, I tell you, it's heavy, really, really heavy, but it changes everything, or changed everything for me. It really did.
Yeah. So, I mean, you alluded to it, and you kind of talked about going through that process and how it changed your perspective. What did it change your perspective about? How did it change how, what you believed, or maybe how you saw yourself or the world or your mother? What were some of the things that, going through that process and reliving her life in miles, how did that change your perspective and what you believed?
Yeah. There's a lot of things growing up that I wish were different, right? There were a lot of things I'm really, really grateful for, but there's a lot that I wish was different. What I realized is that she's just like everybody else. She did the best she could with what she had. She had a really tough upbringing, a lot harder than mine was, and that led her to be the person that she was. I had held that against her for so long, instead of seeing the gift that I had a mom. A lot of other people didn't. They don't have that. I had somebody that was there towards the end. I had somebody that was calling me, that was reaching out. A lot of people can't say that. And so I missed all of those little opportunities kind of along the way. And, there's a lot that I blame myself for, at the very end. Why didn't I pick up the phone? Why didn't I engage? Why didn't I take my wife's advice and fly down, to be there for her? But all those whys, when you take a step back, you realize that we are where we are because of the decisions that we've made. Good or bad, we chose to be here right now, and it tweaks something in me to realize that I have an opportunity now, right, to be that person that I wanted to have to my kids, to my wife, right, and to really create something that's meaningful. I can be that in my company. I can give back and be the guy that when I make that phone call, somebody's actually going to pick up, and they're not even going to second guess getting on a plane and flying down. There's not going to be that regret that's going to be there. And if they can't make it, they're going to know it's okay, right? And I can be the person that can leave that behind, for each of these people, and I can create or at least start that path in people. They may not want to hear it right now. Some of the people that are listening to this, podcast episode, they may not be ready to hear it right now, but it's planting a seed, right? The same way that, Brian's advice planted a seed, the way that my daughter's, passing away planted a seed, right? That's all they are. They get watered over time. It made me realize that, like, that's me. That's my opportunity. Every one of those seconds is my opportunity to do that. And so every step that I took, looking at it from her perspective, just allowed me to see that I can change that for other people. It doesn't have to be like that. To take control back allowed me to say, I control what I do with this grief, with this anger, with my past. I'm controlling it, right? I'm not going to allow it to control me any longer. And there's a lot of miles where I was just in tears, man. You can't see the path in front of you, but I needed it, and it's okay. And I let myself have that. And I took control. That control, so heavy, right? And we talked about this before, that we have this unlimited potential, right? That abundance mindset means that there's enough for you. There's enough for me. There's enough for every human being on the face of this planet to have everything that they want. But because of that, they need to own it. We need to own it. We own our own path. And that's just, I don't know, man, it's heavy. So it starts to accept that ownership and start driving with it.
Yeah.
I feel like
I think no, you're not. I'm locked in. You're not at all. I think it's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I think it's important to talk about. It's important to understand. And you talked about the kind of taking back control. And that's one of the things that these kind of blend together a bit. One of the things we had talked about previously is, and this is one of the things that we've noticed, just you study people that have been successful in any area, you study people that have, been peak performers in their career in life, they believe in what we call the power to create, our belief that, we can take these ideas we have in our head and turn them into reality, that we get to choose what it is that we want out of life, and we could set in a vision and go achieve it, believing that we can make it happen. I think you've called this the 2V state. And this is really where visionary leaders are born. This is where creativity and imagination spring from. But it's an important kind of realization. And so was that the thing you said, maybe the choice, you said we are where we are because of the choices that we've made. That was one of the things, running those miles, that you hadn't really chose before, or you had not really taken control of those choices up until that moment in time, at least to the extent maybe that you wanted to.
And so here's the rub. I'd like to think that it'd be so easy to say that. The truth is, at the end of the miles, I realized that I had been in control, right? That every single problem that I ever got into, every single fallacy, all the good things too, like, they were my choices. I did what I did because of my choice, right? It's me. So I can't blame anything else. I can't say that I started making the choices at that point, because that'd be a lie, right? I had made all those choices that led me to that place, that, hadn't nurtured the relationship with my mom, right? It's not that I didn't have a relationship with my mom, or that, growing up, my mom wasn't there, and growing up, it was really difficult. And so that relationship was broken. That's one way to look at it. The truth is I didn't nurture it for whatever it could have been. I didn't nurture it. Right. I chose not to. That's heavy, right? It's really, really important, I think, for people to really get a hold of that. Because when we start thinking about tapping into that unlimited potential, to tapping into the universe is going to give you ideas, right? It's going to come to you and it's going to say, Sean, you need to do this, man. You're going to wake up and you'll be like, yeah, I got to do this. And then you don't do anything with it. It's going to go to somebody else, right? Or it can be yours. It's your story, right? But you choose at that point. Are you going to accept what the universe gives you and do something with it? Or are you going to let somebody else have it? And that's okay too, maybe. At that time, you just weren't ready for it. Let somebody else have it. But it also means that you have to let go of whatever that opportunity is if you choose not to partake in it. And that helps us move past in high school, I was, the all-star track guy, and great. Maybe you could have gone to the Olympics, but you let somebody else have that, and that's okay because you went this other route, right? And that got you to where you are. And now, you have this great opportunity in front of you to do something different.
Yeah. So it was I think that's a great point, is whether we choose or don't choose, even the not choosing is in and of itself a choice.
Isn't that Rush?
Is that Rush?
I think that's the Rush song, yeah.
Okay. Maybe I stole it from Rush. But I think that's true. I think, I know for me, I think for a lot of people, even recognizing that is, I think to your point, heavy, because up until the moment in time where we fully embrace that and believe that everything is a choice and that I'm, in the driver's seat here, I think up until we really take that moment in time, we haven't made a lot of these choices. And maybe part of it is, I think, at least for me, we didn't even fully realize that we had the ability to make the choice.
Yeah.
And so the choice was coming up, it was slapping us in the face, and we didn't even realize that it was a choice to begin with.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, the understanding that, hey, like everything is a choice. And up until this point, I am where I am because of the choices I've made and the choices I haven't made, which are choices in of themselves. But that's such a different perspective, I think, that I've had at different periods of my life, for sure. I think for a lot of people, they don't recognize that they do have the choice. So you talked about it a little bit, but I want to go in further. Like you said, that's heavy. What do you mean by that? Or why do you go there? Why do you say that's heavy?
I'll give you a real example of it that I think most people can relate to. You wake up in a bad mood and immediately you get into an argument with your partner. Coffee spills, something happens, you just get into an argument. That happened to me yesterday. Man, she's so rude. She just doesn't get it. I got all these things going on. What is wrong with her? That's my initial reaction, right? It's keeping it real. Like I'm not enlightened. I'm not the Buddha. That's my initial reaction. When I have a second to take a step back, I'm like, man, what is she dealing with right now? What did I do? That led to this. I was a jerk, right? I responded really, really curt when she, went to wake me up. I could have done things a heck of a lot different, and I now own that, right? And I have to do something. I have to do something with it, because if I don't, what kind of jerk am I? That's a real example of why it can get heavy. I mean, it's kind of light, but it's a real example of it. You own it, right? Nobody can make you do something, right? Nobody's making you angry. You're allowing yourself to get angry. You're reacting a certain way, but you have a choice. You could react differently. In the moment, it's hard, but you could react differently. And that's where, I mean, the heaviness really comes in, because it's all of those little moments that you really want to, like, the dude cut me off in traffic, right? I get riled up. Why am I getting riled up? Why is it that big of a deal? Why is it that big of a deal to him that he has to tell me I'm number one as he's passing me by? But I'm going 5 miles over. What's he going through right now? I don't need to get riled up at that. I can have empathy for him. I can understand, he's probably going through something right now. To react that big, he's probably going through something. The entire world begins to be painted completely different, when you look at it through that lens. It's a weight, but it's also lifting a weight off in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, no, I think we've talked about it before. I think you get to this point in your evolution and anybody's evolution of understanding of, just how we operate as human beings, how the world operates, and we start to recognize that we are at this moment in time because of our choices, and we start to recognize that, the idea of unlimited potential means that I can learn anything I need to learn, I can become anyone I need to become. And you get to that moment in time, and it is heavy because, one, I am where I am right now because of me, and you got to own that. And two, it's heavy, I think, even on the bright side is, when you can do anything, what do you do?
Yeah. How do you define it, right? Yeah.
Right.
No, it's it's so true, because you nailed it. That's that's part of the challenge. If you could do anything, the whole world is given to you, right? When you're a kid, you could be a fire truck if you want to be a fire truck, right? What do you do? What do you want to do? How do you define that? Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But
yeah, it's beautiful, and it's overwhelming. I think it's overwhelming because, and I know this is true for me, I think it's true for a lot of people. It gets overwhelming because up until that moment in time, we've probably really only, and we've talked about this too, something that Joe talks about all the time. Up until a certain moment in time, we've maybe set goals or we've had aspirations, but we've only done that from a place of who we think we are right now, not who we can become. And so as a result of that, the choices are much more limited. The choices are, in a lot of cases made for us, or we don't recognize that the choice is even there. When you get to this moment, it's kind of like you can do anything. I think that was a difficult thing for me, but I'm curious kind of your perspective on it when you get to that moment. One of the difficult things for me was making the choices. How did you go about, or how do you even think about choosing what it is that you want, or where you want to go, or who you want to be?
Yeah. It's think when we talk to people about setting goals, whether it's in business or whether it's in life, we guide people. That's our role. I'm in HR, I'm a business partner. I meet with people, I kind of work to understand where it is that they want to go, and then help them create the goals to get there, or the steps that they're going to take to get there. That's really all goals are, just kind of steps. I think a lot of times, though, that it's kind of pre-written by the society that we're in, right? Whether it's the professional goals, and if I'm an AVP, then my goal is to move to VP, and if I'm a VP, my goal is to move to SVP, because that's what we do, right? If I have no car, then my goal is to get a car, because I'm an American and we need a car and I need a house. Is that really meaningful to you? Does that wake you up in the morning? Like, what is it that is really going to get you going and waking you up? So when I think about goals, when I think about setting those goals and painting that vision, it's thinking about the end state that I want to get to, right? And kind of working my way back from that, all the while kind of asking, what's the goal, right? What's the reason that I really want to hit this? What is it that's driving it? And it changes, throughout. And I may find when I get done with it that the goal I thought was the goal wasn't actually the goal. Like it's just not what I want to do. I think I had shared like the epitaph kind of process with you, right? It's thinking about your gravestone. What do you want written on your gravestone at the end? What is it that's going to be on it? And actually thinking about that to say, you got a couple sentences to distill everything down on, and that's all that's going to be left. What is that? That's a great place to start, to set goals around that, because that's the goal of the goal, right? For me, I'm a loving husband, a devoted dad, steadfast friend, and an inspiring coworker, right? Touches on each of the components that I really wanted to be touched on. I lead with kindness. I lead with integrity. Those are the key things that are the goals behind the goals. Now I can go through and I can set, what are the goals that are going to go behind that? How do I get to that end point in a meaningful way that's going to be fun along the way too? and it guides the things I say yes to at work. It guides the amount of effort that I put into things at work. And if I'm going to be an inspiring coworker, then I need to do inspiring things. And I want to take on the big projects that are going to inspire people. If I'm going to lead with integrity, then the decisions that I make when I work a case or when I take something on or I'm working with a business is going to be with integrity. Because at the end, that's it. That's my goal. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I'm glad you went there. I think, that's one of the things, even just tactically, that we notice looking at anybody that's accomplished something of significance. We talk about finding the why. What are the core drivers? And you said it a couple of times, the goal behind the goal, the why behind the why. And, it has covered everything, like Michael Jordan was famous for this, finding and making and using personal slights as, motivation to, take out somebody he was playing. And half the time he was just making it up in his head, but he would use it as, a way to give himself, tap into some extra gears and go out and dominate. So I think, from a tactical perspective, it's been used in a lot of different circumstances. Sometimes it's, making parents or kids proud. Sometimes it's proving somebody wrong. Sometimes it's, escaping a difficult situation. But I think it's an important thing. And, you can use it to really tap into, find new gears, in the short term. But I love the way that you kind of frame that too, which is, in a lot of ways, if we're really slow down and think about it, it can be a compass.
Yeah, it's
for making the decisions. Yeah. So what kind of is that? That's kind of the biggest one that you found. That's been the recent one. Are there other kind of whys behind the whys or goals behind the goals that you've had at previous points in your life? I mean, you alluded to it earlier, like you even used some of the things early on in your life that maybe you weren't as thrilled with, as you said. That's kind of what drove you into maybe be some, find some levels of success. What have been kind of some of the different things that you've tapped into, whether consciously or unconsciously, and, how have they evolved over time?
Yeah. So I think the epitaph one is one of the newer ones that I've started to use in the last couple of years for reasons that we discussed. When I hit my 15-year anniversary with Sutherland 5 years ago now, because I've now been 20 years. I was thinking back over the course of 15 years, right? And so what I did is, it's been talked about elsewhere, so this isn't my idea by any stretch. I'm sure it'll sound familiar, but you take a piece of paper and you make 12 lines, right? And basically you're making 70 little slots, right? 70 little boxes. And then I went through and I filled out all the little boxes that I'd lived up until now, right? 70 is about how long an individual, 72, right? Whatever. About 70 years is about how long you have to live. If I've lived for now 48 years, right? How many boxes do I have left? I got 22 boxes left. What am I going to do with those 22 boxes? I did that when I hit my 15-year anniversary, and I've done it kind of every year since, and just fill in another box and just look at what's left. I got, assuming it's 70, and I hope to live longer than 70, by the way. So I'm not, cutting myself short. But I mean, that's, if it is 70, then that's 22 more Christmases that I have, right? That's 22 more wedding anniversaries with my wife. That's it. When one of those is gone, that means I got 21, and then I got 20. And you make the most of it, right? To keep that reality in front of you as you're going. So that's been that's been a big one, for me. That came before the epitaph kind of piece. Puts things into perspective. I don't care how old you are. 5 years ago I was only early 40s, right? We'll call it 40. So there's still like 30 boxes left. Those boxes fill up fast. What do you think about that? You ever done something like that?
No, I haven't. I probably should. I think that's even this past year for me personally, I think it's one of those things. I love the exercise because I think it's one of those things when you're young, and the younger you are, probably the more you feel this way. When you're young, you feel kind of untouchable. You feel immortal. Like you don't even really give any serious thought to the idea of death. The idea that we're only here for a finite period of time. You just feel like I'm always going to be young and it's going to go on forever. And I think that that realization forces you that we're not going to be here forever. It forces you to make some decisions. And, I think that's even this past year, I think that's been an evolution for me. And again, you and I have talked about this before. It's one thing to understand something intellectually, another thing to really understand it viscerally, really believe it, really understand it, and really kind of embody it in your bones. And even this past year, I think was just some wake-up calls. Best friend growing up, had cancer 5 years ago, thought he was good, cancer came back, and, went through brutal chemo. And it's just much more intense even than last time. And it was something that, and I had other things with my uncle, was diagnosed, and, had health issues with other family members and friends. It was just kind of like, it felt like the universe was lining up all of these reminders like, hey, Sean, you're not going to be here forever. Make some decisions and figure out what's next and what you really want. At least that's, that's all you can kind of do is in terms of an interpretation. So I love the exercise because I think it's something that's even my understanding of that has even evolved just over the past year. And I think it forces you to get to a point, we kind of talked before, you get to a point where when anything is possible and you have kind of this sense of abundance that I could do and be and have anything that I want, it can be kind of overwhelming because where do you start? And, what do you do? And, we always talk about making a master dream list and just starting to make a list of these things and write them down, which I think is important just to start getting in the habit and getting these things out of your head. But at a certain point, you got to make some decisions. And because if you try to do everything all at once, you're not going to give any of it really any justice. And I think, we'd even talked about this previously. I think is the Latin root of the word decision is like incision, which means to cut away. And part of making a decision about who I want to be, what do I want to accomplish, is cutting away other possibilities. It's saying no to other things. And I think it's a difficult thing for sure, but I think it's a great thing. And I think it's a muscle that a lot of us, I know for myself, don't exercise enough, really choosing. There's been plenty of times even in my relationship with Joe, and he's mentored me for, I think it's close to 10 years now, maybe over 10 years now. Getting old. But there's been plenty of times where you get frustrated. I would get frustrated with them, like, just give me the answer. Tell me what I should do. Tell me what the next thing is. Tell me how I should think about this. Just give me the answer. And he wouldn't. And it would frustrate me until it got to a point where I realized he wasn't giving me the answer because he can't do it for me. He can't make the choice for me. I got to choose. But I think it's something that we don't do. Some people go through their whole life really never choosing. I mean, you kind of talked about it before that, like, the next step is kind of preordained. Like, I'm an AVP, so the next step is a VP. I'm an American, so I need a car, or I need a house. And we don't necessarily always stop and think about, what do I actually want? Who do I actually want to be? So I think I love the filling in the boxes, because I think that's a great forcing function to start to think about it. The epitaph, I think, when you said that in one of our conversations, I loved the thought process, because what better way to distill down who you want to be than you got a couple sentences to sum up your 70, 80, 90, whatever, however many years here. You got to really make some choices there.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing we don't have an unlimited amount of is time, right? Yeah. It's challenging. There was a guy that used to work for Sutherland, Brian Lemon. And at one point early in my career here, I was thinking about leaving the organization. I was offered an opportunity to go work for a small startup. And I have no idea why, because Brian was like well above where I was. Like, he's so far above my pay grade. Like, I knew his name. That was about it. I sent him a thank you not too long ago for this, but he took me into his office, and he's like, "So, Chuck, I understand you're looking at leaving." He goes, I want to paint you a picture. So he went to his whiteboard, which is like my whiteboard back here. And it's one of the reasons I have like the extra large 4x8 whiteboards. Sits down or stands up and starts painting out on the whiteboard all of these different things, right? operations and master coach and all these different, positions within the organization. He goes, this could be you. This could be your track through the organization, or you can leave and you can try something different. The choice is yours. I just want you to understand that if you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another. And if I don't tell you what you're going to be saying no to, then you're not making an informed decision. And that conversation, that's what we're talking about here. It made a huge, huge difference. And I've referred to that a number of times in different positions that I've been in here. I've thought back to, him taking the time to do that. I think that was the only conversation I ever had with him, ever. It was just that one. But that resulted in what so far is a, 20-year career, with this company. And it's been absolutely amazing. So it's cool how, those little, we talk about those pivot points, right? Those pivot points. They come in when you least expect it. You got to do something with it or you don't.
Yeah. Well, I talk about a mic drop conversation, the only one, and that's the one he has.
Yeah. Still remember it, man. It was so long ago, but yeah.
Well, I think that really is, in a lot of ways, it's one of the things that makes for great leadership, is helping them to kind of paint the picture and helping them, helping people choose. I think we talk, like we keep saying, it's heavy when the choice is yours, but when we can lean on some other people to help inform our decision, it can be super helpful, but while also having them kind of reinforce the idea that this is still your decision, this is your spot, and you got to decide, who you want to be and who you don't want to be, or where you want to go and where you don't want to go. And John Casey had talked about that. I had a conversation with him last week or 2 weeks ago, and said the same thing. One of his mentors, his first kind of real mentor, was a guy named Mark Colosi, and that's how he would frame, even these things that he would work on. Like, you could either be this guy or you could be that guy. Choice is up to you. But it can be a really powerful thing that gets us maybe to that next place, or maybe to stay on the track we're already on. So we talked a little bit before about, you called it kind of like the 2V state. Talk to me about that for a second, if you don't mind. What do you mean by that? What's your thought process around it?
So 2B state is thinking about the art of the possible. So if I think about being a loving husband, devoted dad, steadfast friend, and inspiring coworker, that's my 2B state. I'm not there yet. Understanding that it's a 2B state takes some of the heaviness off of it, because it allows you to acknowledge, like, I'm not there yet. I'm still a jerk to my wife when I wake up in the morning, and I'm having a bad day because there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm not there yet. It's a 2B state. Knowing what that 2B state is and defining it allows one to continue working toward that path, right? Towards that 2B state. And one way to think about it is, actually, I thought about this on the run. I texted it to my wife like immediately on the run. I stopped and texted it because I'm like, got it. We use the past to inform, and we use the future to inspire, so that we can make the right decisions right now. That's what your 2B state is. It's inspiration. It may be something I never achieve. Right? I'm not going to be the perfect dad, coworker, or anything else. I acknowledge that. It's no way. But it's an aspiration. It's where I want to get to. I set my goals. I set my feet. I set my face towards that. And the decisions that I make, 80% of the time, start me walking toward that 2B state, little by little by little, step by step by step.
I love that. Yeah, the past is to inform, the future is to inspire. That's something. Well, I think that's such a great thing for anybody to understand. And you kind of talk about your 2B state in terms of the epitaph. It's a thing to aspire to. How else have you used maybe that concept? Maybe you didn't call it a 2B state, but of this vision of something I wanted. And have you set that before, even, prior to doing the epitaph exercise personally? What have you, where have you kind of used that before? What's it enabled or unlocked for you?
So it's something I realize is an uncanny skill that I have, right? To take that 2B state and figure out, like, all right, how the hell do I get there, right? What steps do we need to take to make that a reality? I'll give you 2 examples. One, start out with is a triathlon. My friend and I signed up to do a triathlon. So I get through this 70 miles with my mom, and I'm like, well, I need to continue because this feels good. In order to continue, I got to have something out there. Like, I'm not just going to wake up on my own and strap on some shoes and go. Cause it's upstate New York. It's going to get cold. It's not even going to be a thing. So I signed up to do an ultra because that makes most logical sense. Why would you sign up for a 5K, or a 10K? Sign up for an ultra. Complete the ultra. Sign up for a triathlon. Why do I sign up for a triathlon? Because I'm deathly afraid of water. Like, deathly afraid of water. When I first started training for the triathlon, putting my foot in the pool made me think that somehow Jaws, surrounded by a bunch of piranhas, are going to be coming out of the drain, attacking me and pulling me down, and nobody was going to know what the hell happened to me. I was just going to disappear. And that was a reality. And I could see it like in my little sports watch, in my Oura Ring tracker, it's showing like a spike. Like, you're stressed right now. You should relax. I'm like, what if I could? My to-be state is finishing this triathlon, making it I just want to finish the thing. Right. So you gotta figure it out. Right. I got the running thing down. I've done the ultra. I got that down pat. I can ride a bike. That's the other part of it. It's not a big deal. The one piece that I need to figure out is swimming. And so you start carving out a path, and little by little, jump in the pool. I don't want to jump in the pool. Jump in the pool. Jaws isn't attacking me. It's okay. You start swimming in open water. Jaws is absolutely going to get me in open water. I swim a couple times in the open water. No, it's not. And then I had this little old lady is passing us in Lake Ontario at sunrise, passing us. Like, she swims right past us like nothing. So she gets out of the water around the same time we did. She had done like a mile. I think I did like 500 yards. And I'm like, how do you do this? Like, what is the trick? And she told me that it's meditation. You breathe and you use it as a meditation, and you just total immersion swimming. You just immerse yourself in it and relax. And I did, and it made a huge difference. And I was able to jump in the pool and put those fears kind of aside. And, I'm doing metta, where I'm sending out loving kindness to my family as I'm swimming, and I can go an hour now, and it's not a big deal. That's the power of a to-be state, right? You know where you want to get to. It's going to help you get past the fear and, all the rest of the stuff, right? So it's kind of, that's one personal example from sports, right? Yeah, laugh it up. Yeah, Jaws is absolutely in every pool. From a work perspective, I've been in situations where some of the businesses that I supported, some of our clients, right, they'll move on to other things. And some of the businesses that I supported, were amongst those. I was lucky enough to have a network that believed in me, right, and believed in the things that I could do and what I was capable of. Yeah, at one point, I'd been tapped on the shoulder and told you have about 60 days. You got to kind of figure this out, right? And then it's a real conversation. I think we were pregnant with Logan at the time. We weren't. She was. I was just showing up. And so it's fearful. And the only thought in my head is I need to provide for my family. I love working here. I got to figure this out. And so there was an opportunity to do some leadership development training with some folks down in Texas and to take a look at, what was going on with employees. Really, really lucky enough that, our HR team, which I was not a part of at that time, right? I'm just this guy. Our HR team and our service delivery team, our organization believes in the people, in the power of people enough to say, Chuck, we're going to invest in you. We want you to go spend some time, figure out what's going on, and see if you can put some solutions behind it. See if you can put some actions behind it. And I did. Looking at the problem statement, we're losing people. We have a retention problem. We have a leadership problem, right? That's really what the root cause is, and doing those analysis and figuring out that here's what the end state is. Here's where our to-be state is, to lower attrition by 12% year over year in this place, to be 30% profitability margin, over here, whatever. When you start to understand that that's where you are, or that's where you want to be, and here's where you are, you can connect the dots to get to that point. And you can begin putting things into place to help those dots connect. And little by little, you begin to get to that point. Where it brings you to is the art of creation. We talked about unlimited potential. When you realize that you have this giant, enormous problem of employee retention, right, within the Americas, it's huge. It's a huge problem. When you start to realize the power that one person has to impact that, that's a huge responsibility. right? You can look at it as we're losing people, but you can also look at it as each one of those people that we lose is a person that's not going to be a future leader. They're not going to have an opportunity to, impact our customers and our clients in a positive way. They may want to, but here's the reasons why they're leaving. Here's the things that we can do about it. You start to put these little things into place. You start to create the opportunities for each of those folks and begin to change the tides. And looking back over those years till now, you can see the payoff, coming about. We were able to hit the COVID situation pretty well, right? We were able to shift the way that we do business very, very quickly, but that is because we had invested in looking at the to-be state ahead of time and setting things into action that were impacting our people and investing in those people early on so that when the need came up, we were able to hit it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. So, I mean, using and kind of double clicking into that example, what were some of the things that you noticed? You had a clear to-be state, hey, we got a retention problem. We need to keep people around. You talked a little bit about it's, really a leadership problem. What were some of the things that you noticed as you were, I think that's the interesting thing too, is as you have this kind of to-be state, once that's clear, subconsciously we start to kind of connect all of these dots, which is kind of how the human mind works. What were some of those dots that you were able to connect? What did you notice, from a root cause perspective? What did you notice even just from a solution? What made the biggest difference in terms of the ability to get it to the point that you got it to where you could weather COVID without much concern?
Yeah, where people trusted us is really what it came down to. Noticing the trend that we're in such a rush. There's so many things that we have to get done on a daily basis. And that's just this reality of business, right? We come into work every day. There's a giant to-do list. I don't care what level of leadership or management you're in, there's going to be a giant to-do list, right? You have 150 emails, you have 13 hours worth of work, you got 6 hours to get it done in. And so what happens when you get people into a situation like that is you start cutting kind of corners, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way. You just, what are the easiest things to put off, right? When you have this giant to-do list, the easiest things to put off are things that are going well. Right? Your A players, it's the easiest thing to put off because they're performing. I don't need to meet with my A player. They're already performing, right? My B, C players, they're doing okay. I can wait till next week to meet with them. What I really need to focus on is my D players to get them up or to get them out, right? You're going to get what you focus on. And if I tell you, don't think about an elephant, you just pictured an elephant.
Absolutely.
And make it even better and tell you, don't picture an elephant that's wearing a pink tutu riding on a ball. I just created a great picture for you not to think about, right? And you're going to go home, you're going to be thinking about that stupid elephant in the pink tutu. So if we're focusing on our D players, guess what we're going to get? D players. People are going to rise to the level that we want them to rise to. And so we shift that conversation. We started investing more and more in leadership development. We have some really fantastic leaders, and Eric Tinch, who's our CPO, and Sue Schmidt, who understand the need to develop leaders, to teach people to coach, to teach people to develop people, to deliver the message that they matter. We start implementing different systems to kind of catch and look at preemptively who's at risk of leaving the organization. And one of the early things that we did was implemented a stay interview for our AB players that we don't want to lose, and asking them questions like, what makes you come to work every single day? What are you looking forward to? How can we motivate you more? That's now evolved into, career development paths and programs that we're working on delivering now and with an organization that allow you to look and say, remember before I said my track is AVP to VP, right? Just standard. What I'm actually interested in is change management and transformation, digital transformation, HR transformation, transforming people, right? That's what gets me up and keeps me coming in every day. The systems that we have in place now take all of the skill sets that I have, all the certifications that I have, the experience that I have, along with my North Star, which is literally called the North Star in the system. And it says, here's your generalized career path, but here's some other things you might want to consider. HR transformation would be one of them. Here's some courses that you can take. Here's some people that you should know. And here's some opportunities that are coming up. When you do that, you completely change the conversation. You're now telling somebody you don't have to go from an agent to a team manager to, a line level manager. The world is yours. Let's define it. Let's give you the skills that you need to get there. Let's help you understand that. And And Sean, it's huge. It's absolutely huge when you can offer that to an organization to see the shift that happens.
Yeah. Well, and it's really kind of systematizing even a lot of what we've been talking about today, which is, putting, and weaving into the culture this idea of, the power to create, this idea of unlimited potential, that, if every employee there understands that at the company saying, hey, you get to choose, you can choose where you want to go. Here are some of the opportunities that are there. When you're weaving that in culturally and systematically, you're going to have people that are going to be a lot happier, that are going to want to stay, and they're going to push themselves more to get there. When they have that, like you call the to be state, that really inspires them. And that's really, we talk about even vertical alignment, how can we align what somebody maybe is responsible for on a day-to-day basis to where they really want to go, whether it's within the organization or personally, they want to buy a house or whatever those things in. When we create that vertical alignment, people find extra gears of motivation to do things that maybe they're not comfortable doing or don't really feel like doing. And, so when you really weave that in, it's, to your point, such a idea, such a huge impact. What has been the impact? What have you seen?
So we're early in this adoption phase and rolling it out. When I talk to the leaders and help them understand, kind of what we're doing, you begin to go down the path of, especially with the leadership, you and I would call it the to be state. What we call it internally is the use case. What are the use cases behind it? What's the ROI, to this, right? So we can sell it to the business. It's really just it's a to be state, right? Imagine being able to take internal talent that you have, right? An unlimited supply of internal talent, and very quickly go in and identify, hey, we have this person that's sitting way over here, in insurance, who has a degree in project management, right? I have a need in project management. I have a need in analyst and advisory. This person has that skill set. I can connect them together. What you begin to see is, to your point, the culture changing, right? To looking inside, looking internal. How can we grow? How can we develop our people? How can I grow? How can I develop? Right? You start seeing, we have a learning hour for all of our directors and above, all of our management team has a dedicated hour that they can choose to use for learning on their calendar. It's scheduled time. Now you start seeing people asking, well, what can I learn? Like, what would you recommend? What should I be looking at? What books should I be reading? I mean, the conversations are totally different. Think along with that, though, you have this need for a cultural shift because it's been done the same way for so long that you have a little bit of a lack of trust and people getting engaged, but certainly see that tide changing, as we go through, in the consistency, right? The consistent step after step after step, day after day after day grind, it begins to pay off and make that difference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, both are so important. I think, you want the structure and the systems to be able to, connect people to these different opportunities and connect people to different people in the organization and help them kind of see where it is that they can go. And at the same time, you have to find a way to impact the culture. You have to find a way, especially if there's not enough trust there, or even sometimes when there is, whenever we're trying to change any sort of behavior, you got to change what people believe first. And if you don't, then you usually falls flat, which is why we see so many initiatives fall flat, so many go-to-markets fall flat, because all of a sudden the salespeople got to do something different and they don't think that they can, or they don't think it's in their best interest, or they're comfortable with what they're comfortable with. And, same thing is true within an organization. I think that's, you need to have both. And I think but when you have both, to your point, man, it makes a huge, huge difference.
Palpable. It's a palpable difference.
Yeah. So you said something before I want to circle back to, about why you chose the triathlon. And you said you chose the triathlon because you were afraid of the water. You were afraid of Jaws.
Yeah.
Why did you?
Real. I'm not kidding you. Struggle's real. I don't get. Yes.
So what made you, because most people, and I think this is, again, it's something that we notice, peak performers versus everybody else. Peak performers will steer into the things that they're afraid of and attack them. Most people run away. What is it that made you say, I'm terrified of the water, so I'm going to do a triathlon, not in spite of being terrified of the water, but kind of seems like because I'm terrified of the water. What in sport did that come from? Why did you kind of make that decision?
Yeah, same reason I did the ultras, because I hate running and because I'm horrible at it. It's funny, I did before I get into that, I did another ultra after the triathlon, which was a mistake. It was way too soon. But as I'm running it, I'm talking to some of the guys that are running with me. These are guys I'm assuming like on my one lap, they were already on like lap 2. They're running barefoot, right? And here I am, like, whatever. Their point was like, you don't have to be the fastest. It doesn't matter in an ultra like how fast you are. The point is to finish. That's it. That's your goal. Your goal is to finish. Nothing else matters. When you're out there, like nothing else matters. It's just to finish. Man, it's such a like freeing mindset to think like I don't have to. It's not a 10K. I'm not running it to like be fast. I'm running it to finish it. I think that goes into kind of answering the question. I've made a lot of stupid decisions along the way, and I've been in a lot of really bad positions because of that. I used to say it's because of, right? Because of the way that I grew up. It's because, I got kicked out of school the first time in 3rd grade because of all of these things that were going on. When you start accepting responsibility, you start looking for those things that scare the hell out of you, because it's the things that scare the hell out of you that the biggest amount of growth, the biggest payoff is going to be there. High risk, high reward. The biggest payoff is going to be there. You know it. You can just feel it, right? Feel it in your gut that something's going to be there, right? It's you waking up when it's negative 10 degrees outside, wondering if you can get your cold plunge in today. You know that there's going to be a payoff. You know that payoff is going to be huge, right? For you, for that time. Like, that's it, man. I just got to the point, especially after my mom passed away, where like I looked back at my track through, and I realized like it's in those moments where I was scared as hell, where I thought I was going to fail, where everything is like stacking up against, everything told me to go the other direction, but I kept going forward anyway. Those have always been the times where like the biggest payoff is there. The biggest payoff is there. Right? It's the moment where, my wife and I were having so many issues that you feel like just giving up and walking away, because that's the easiest thing to do. And it's probably better for the kids. You tell yourself all these stories, but we fought through it and we invested in each other. And what we have now is beautiful. And it's because of that, right? When I finished the triathlon, I can look back and I'm like, I didn't die. I'm good. I want to do another one, right? But there was a moment in that triathlon, right? When I was out swimming, I was way out. I felt like miles, like I was halfway to Canada. I swear to God, I was halfway to Canada. I was off track, I think. Nobody was around me. There's none of the safeguards or anything else that I thought were going to be there. And I started cramping and I started freaking out. I thought I was going to like drown. I'm looking around for somebody on the wakeboard to like come help me. And it was in that moment that I thought back to like all of the training and all of the steps and everything I didn't want to do, and waking up, in the freezing cold and running and, going to the Y, first thing in the morning and sharing a lane with some 90-year-old dude who's faster than me, and going through all that. And I stopped and I breathed, and it was like, felt like I was born again, and just continued on. And it changes your mindset. It absolutely changes everything, right? And I know I've said that about a couple of things, but it does. Each of these things change everything. And that's why you lean into what's super, super hard, because there's something on the other side of that. And you just got to figure out what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's the value in doing hard things, and not, you go back to the JFK speech about going to the moon. We go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it is hard. And there's a difference between we're doing this in spite of the fact that it's hard, and we're doing this because it's hard. And there's a difference, it's subtle, most people don't pick up on it, but there's a difference between I'm going to do it, anyways, versus I'm going to do it. This is exactly the reason I'm going to do it, because this is going to be difficult, because this is going to be scary. And I think you touched on, even just the perspective on fear, that, you look back at all these different points in your life, and the points that you've been most afraid have been, when you push through those things, have been the points that you've had the most growth out of. And that's what Joe would always say about fear. People that are highly successful, they have this view that fear is not my enemy, fear is my friend. That, when I'm going into something that I am afraid of, that I'm doing it because on the other side of this, I believe that this is the biggest opportunity for growth. There's going to be something good that comes out of it. And it is an interesting thing about fear that is the more that you do the things that you fear, the more the fear subsides. So much of it is just in our head. But, as soon as you get into the pool and you start to do those things, the more we do it, the more it kind of goes away. But it is a muscle. I mean, all of these are mental muscles, I think is maybe the simplest way to describe it. Like, it's a muscle. I think that's the value of doing some hard things and doing things that you're scared of, is that you exercise the muscle. And then you can turn around and say, maybe I could apply this somewhere else. Maybe it opens up some things where maybe I've been cutting myself off a little bit. Has that been something that you've noticed, just the value of doing hard things, doing things that you're afraid of? As the muscle has built up, have you felt yourself recognize or maybe be more willing to tackle some things that maybe you wouldn't have prior to going through some of this stuff?
I think absolutely, right? And you begin to notice it and kind of look for it. I'm more willing to lean in and enjoy the leaning in, right? The late days at work, the, late hour conversations, all those things, right? You lean into it more and more. There's also, I think, that it's not just a muscle, but I think it prepares you as well, right? Because if I lace up and they go outside on a day like today when it's, 10 degrees, or, a day where my water bottle's freezing, what else can happen, right, that's going to be that bad? Probably not much, right? When you're out doing things like that, everything becomes so simple, and you realize that, like, life is actually that simple. It really is. Like, I'm doing a 30-mile run. All I care about is water, food, and being able to take the next step. That's it. I don't want to have a conversation with you. I don't want to do anything else. I'm not thinking about much except for maybe some pudding. Like, pudding is great. Things are that simple, and there's been other times in my life where it was literally that simple. Getting back to that, like, it's a gift, when you can. And I think that's, yes, the hard things steel you so that you can face more hard things and so you can get through it, right? But it also reminds you of not only your own frailty, but also what you're capable of and what you actually need, right? What do you actually need? It's not much, If you can remember that it's not much. It's really not. It's going to be okay, right?
Yeah. No, I think there's so much truth to that. I think one of the things that I noticed for myself is, and I noticed it especially, and we've kind of talked about this, a couple years back, I decided I wanted to train for the Murph. One of the things, just kind of like because it was hard. And, at the time I started training for, like, I don't think I could do a single pull-up. And, I got to throw on a weighted vest and do 100 of them. And, there's a lot to it. And I think one of the things that was a realization for me during that is exactly what you just said, that it's a lot simpler than we like to think. We tend to overcomplicate these things. And I'm sitting there looking, and I found myself doing it at the beginning, like, okay, I want to do this thing. Like, what are the, what's the different workout routine I should be doing, or what supplements?
It, right?
Yeah, right. You're Googling, you're looking for all these shortcuts, and like, what are the supplements I should be taking? And, it's all this stuff. And at the end of the day, it was just, okay, the Murph is you throw on a weighted vest, you run a mile, you do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, you run another mile. That's the Murph. And at the beginning, I'm looking for all these shortcuts, all these different things to do. And at the end of the day, you come to this point where if I need to be able to do this challenge, if I need to be able to do more pull-ups, I just need to do more pull-ups, more push-ups, and more squats. If I need to be able to run faster, I just got to run more. It really is that simple. I found myself naturally just kept looking for the shortcut. And I think it's true for a lot of things, just even in the process of what it is that I need to do. But I think the other, to your point as well, of what's really important, when we go through hard things, whether we complete hard things or we go through hard things in our lives, simplicity starts to reveal itself. You hear about that all the time, and you talked about it at the beginning. You have a moment where your daughter passes away, your mother passes away. These things all of a sudden revealed what's really important. And it's a lot simpler than we like to think. We think it's so complicated. We convince ourselves it's so complicated. But most of the time, it's really simple.
There's beauty in that simplicity too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to, circle to one other spot, if you don't mind, because I think it's just important for the context of all this, the ultras, the triathlons, the career, ascension. I want to circle back, if you're okay with it, to talk about where you came from, where you started. Because you alluded to it a couple times that, there was things maybe that weren't the best growing up. And I want to circle back to that, if you're okay talking about it, just because I think it's important for people to recognize where we all come from, where certain people come from. Because I think it's easy to look at somebody like you that's accomplished a lot in a lot of different areas and think, oh, that's just Chuck. Chuck is different. Chuck is special. I couldn't do those things, but that's Chuck.
Definitely different and special. We won't
but
go
only
into
in the
that.
best way. But only in the best way.
Yeah. No, I grew up in your typical like suburban middle class. In the 80s, right? I got addicted to drugs, which took me down a pretty dark path. I remember, some situations where I'd gotten into playing guitar and got okay with it and picked up a couple of guitars along the way. I had a BC Rich Ironbird, which is a super nice guitar for me at the time, and I traded it for drugs. I gave up just about everything for it. I ended up homeless at 15. Starting off being homeless here in Rochester in the winter. I slept in parking garages and spent a lot of time in local restaurants that were open 24 hours. Ended up somehow in Florida. And, when I was there, it's probably a conversation for like another time, but some really bad things happened and ended up coming back to Rochester again. And kind of got cleaned up and then fell back into it, back and forth. I was lucky enough that I had an opportunity to go through a pretty intensive rehab, and I ended up living on a commune for a little while. I milked cows in the middle of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Pennsylvania, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I think things started kind of coming together a lot on the long walks down sounds so cliche, long walks down a dirt road. There was a time of year when Orion was in front of me when I was walking to milk the cows, and I was looking at Orion coming back. When I came back, came back up. As odd as it sounds, like I still look up at Orion now, but seeing that made me feel less alone. I felt like I was part of something, somehow. So I finished that and kind of fell back into the same stuff. And all of this is happening in a very short, period of time. Actually got me out of, that lifestyle and put me on the track of, I need to earn money. I need to make a difference. Like, I'm never going to allow this to happen again. Right. And you and I had talked about, me being homeless before and how, a lot of the decisions that I had made was out of a fear. Right. And I still live with some of that fear. Like, I will never let that happen. Like, I push hard to make sure that my family is taken care of. But I remember there was a situation. I was living in Mississippi near the Gulf of Mexico. I'm literally about a block away. And I had overdosed. And everybody that was in the house left. And it was just me on the floor in the bathroom. And somehow I came out of it hours later. And I was sitting on the front porch. And across the way, there was an ambulance that was taking a guy out of his apartment. And he didn't make it. And I just remember just thinking at that moment, that could have been me. It literally could have been me. And I called my sister, and my sister paid for a ticket for me to come back up to, Rochester. And I came back up and got a job. And then I got a second job, and I started working 2 jobs, one during the day and one overnight. And I never looked back, never looked back from that point. Right. And that was, I don't even know, over 30 years ago, right? Not well over 30 years ago. It was catalyst. It was change. It wasn't a complete change, right? We talked a lot about the path, kind of leading to now, but it started something. It's events like that they paint a different picture. I'm grateful for all of those things and all of those opportunities, because it paints me who I am now. I can have conversations with folks that other people couldn't have. and I can come at it from a very real perspective. Yeah, I'm on the board for Uplift Irondequoit, which is a coalition to lessen the impact of drugs within the adolescent population. I mean, I'm literally doing that because I'm at a place now where I feel like I want to give back, and it was a very real experience for me going through that. And if I can help just a couple of people not have to go through that, and that's it. That's where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate you sharing. Like you said, we've talked about some of it before, but I think, even that we talked about the finding the why, and we talk about the epitaph and, the evolutions. Like you said, this is all evolutions of these things and understandings and our use of some of these tools. Even the simplest one in terms of finding a why is I'm not going to let that happen. And, that can be a big driver. I'm not going to let that happen to me, or, a little later, I'm not going to let that happen to my family, or I'm not going to let that happen to, if I can help somebody else not have to go through that. So I appreciate you sharing. And, I thought, like I said, I think just to understand, we're talking about triathlons and ultras and, you overseeing major initiatives at Fortune 500 companies. And it's important to recognize that it is a journey, and it's an evolution of a journey. Yours isn't a particularly inspiring one. So I appreciate you sharing, with candor, because I think it's helpful for me. It's helpful for, I think, a lot of other people. Before we kind of wrap here, one last question I had for you, and then we can touch on anything else that asks that you have for listeners. But kind of in reflection, what belief or beliefs do you think are most important to pass down to the next generation, or maybe even your kids in particular?
That's deep. I really want my kids to walk away with an understanding that they can create anything. Anything is possible for them. If they want it, they can go after it. They can get it, while still being grounded in the reality that takes effort. It takes work. That's one part. The other part is I want them to remember that they're not going to remember the name of their great grandmother, right? I guarantee it. They're not. In the same way, their great grandkids aren't going to remember them. It's not about them. It's not about me. Nobody's going to remember me in 3 generations. It's probably going to take less than that. They're just not. The reality is, it's not about me. At the same time, I can create anything, right? And I can do anything. What is it that I want to do that's going to make an impact now? That's going to be meaningful now. That's going to allow me to have fun and the people around me to come up, right? And potentially that's going to create something, even if it's a feeling in that later on, that they can pass down to their kids, Because what does last, that's what lasts, right? It's the feeling that you leave behind to somebody. Like that's going to last, right? That's what your great grandpa used to say is probably never going to come out of anybody's mouth. I'm not going to give a nugget that's worth, writing on the wall of like a gymnasium, but they're going to have this weird something inside of them that was passed down from their parent, and that parent was my kid, right? Or it's somebody that I'm working with, now. It's a kid that I'm working with, here at Sutherland. Right? It's just going to be something that's going to get passed down, right? It's going to make a difference. And I really, really believe it. They're not going to remember who it was or why or any of that stuff, right? But I know that I played a part in that, and that's part of it. But that's what I want people to take away. And that's what I want my kids to walk away with. Do anything you want to do. You have it in you to do anything. Fully believe in that. Making money is easy. Making your dreams come real, man, that's easy. Picking the right dreams, that's hard. Making that impact is even more important, right? That's it.
I love it. I think that's a great capstone for the conversation. Anything else that you want to share with any listeners, anybody, any asks that you have, the audience?
No, I don't think so. I think here's the reality, right? I'm so excited to be here. You mentioned John's name, John Casey. Years ago, like I had an opportunity to sit in a classroom with John and a bunch of people. I have no idea who the heck they were. Like, honestly, I don't. It was so long ago, but I've honestly, I've never forgotten it. Never forgotten it. It was one of the things like that absolutely made a difference to me. And it was so awesome to see you take some of my team through the same things that I had been through years ago, and to see like the ahas kind of light up on their faces, and like to see the difference that it makes. Like, it's just so cool. I'm so happy to like be sitting here talking to you, now about this, knowing that it's kind of like, it's full circle, because I literally sat in the room with John and I remember the lessons that were taught, and it made a huge difference, right? I went from thinking that I'm always going to be a $4 an hour employee to being an AVP of Corporate HR. And a lot of that is saying yes to opportunities, and saying yes to those opportunities is because of the things that John instilled, in us. And I don't know what happened to the rest of the people that were in the class that we were with. I hope they stayed in touch. Yeah, to me, it made a huge difference. I'm so excited to have had the opportunity to be here. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time. This has been a conversation I've been looking forward to for a long time. And I've loved working with your group and with you. And yeah, it is something to see the light bulbs go off, man. It's a lot of fun. So I appreciate the kind words and I appreciate the time. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely.
This podcast is powered by Mojo, the people transformation platform. As a global top 20 training firm and the world leader in motivational intelligence development, our clients kept asking us a question: what does the future of professional development look like? So think of this podcast as a teaser for what could exist inside your organization. Because we all use podcasts and AI to learn and improve in our personal lives, right? So why are we not using podcasts and AI to transform our people at work? We've taken everything we've learned from working with 40% of the Fortune 500 in 97 countries worldwide, and we've combined it with cutting-edge technology to give you the most powerful weapon in the history of human development. Here's how it works. Almost like magic, what Mojo does is it generates powerful, targeted conversations among employees to rapidly resolve challenges like low or unbalanced performance, high turnover, poor leadership, low change readiness, low succession readiness, or the merging of cultures and the elimination of silos. Along the way, Mojo embeds a success culture into the DNA of every team at your organization and enhances every interaction your people have from now on, both inside and outside of work. Start a 14-day free trial of Mojo today at joinmojo.com/trial and experience what has changed hundreds of thousands of lives around the world, mine included. So get started now at joinmojo.com/trial. That's joinmojo.com/trial.
And the more I studied it, the more I began to see that was the overwhelming commonality of the most successful people that I ever met.
And just the empowerment of the conversations, how it just really motivates you. You don't come across people that impact you that way.
Because a lot of people could say to me, oh yeah, no, I get it. But yet they really don't get it.
This, if you really lean into it, can be life-changing.
Mojo's is part of our DNA and what we do during team meetings.
And I just looked at Randy like, oh my God.
I feel like that's made a lot of impact in my direct report's life because they're not afraid to talk to me.
But I started to see what this gentleman in podcast, and I was like, it was just kind of surreal because it was almost like he foreshadowed what I was going to be up against that week.
They would come in every week and ask me, Paul, how far would you like to get? That's when I told them 105%. And they laughed, and I said, no, 105% is where I'm going to be.
I think that concept is one that everybody can buy into, and saying that I can improve 1% from yesterday.
An unstoppable state of mind that enables you and I to achieve everything that we want out of our professional and our personal life.